I'm John Lanius. Welcome to The Room. The Room gives you access to Geniecast's top thought leaders, authors, entrepreneurs, business coaches, sports celebrities, and much more. Our guests will share ideas and concepts that you may use to better your organization and propel your teams. Our guest today on this inaugural edition is Lili Gil Valletta. She is the co-founder and CEO of the cultural intelligence market research firm Cultural Intel and the cultural marketing agency CN+. In addition, she sits on the board of Zoomies and holds the distinction of being named the 2018 Hispanic Business Person of the Year. You may also recognize her from the Fox News Channel, Fox Business News, and CNN Espanol. So Lili, welcome to the inaugural episode of The Room. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's just jump right in. I mean, I would love to hear a little bit about your background, your origin story. Tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking, John, because I am proudly, I guess, the embodiment of the American dream. I am originally from Colombia. And when I came to this country, I couldn't even speak English at the age of 17. So talk about a will and a desire to progress. And here I am now. Eventually turned corporate executive, then entrepreneur, which I'm sure we're going to get to that story. But that is where I come from. And my whole family is still back in Colombia. So I'm telling you, the American dream is still very, very real.
I love that. I mean, you're working in so many different areas like AI, cultural intelligence. There's so many things that we could talk about, which is really what this show is all about. But let's start with cultural intelligence. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so John, is interesting. That term came to me when I was a corporate executive back at Johnson & Johnson. When we're looking at new products and new product launches, I realized that if we paid attention to the shifting demographics of the country and the makeup of our consumer base and where growth was, I realized that unless we had an inclusive approach to our business, we would be missing out on opportunity. And I felt like, okay, that is cultural intelligence, just as we have business intelligence and emotional intelligence. So it's really having an inclusive lens into the way you interpret business opportunities. And there it was. It kind of hit me. Fast forward now, I'm still using that term. I have proudly secured the trademark for it. And it is being aware of, understanding, and applying cultural competence and data into your everyday business. And that's what we do and inspire many Fortune 100s to integrate into the way they look at their markets.
Yeah, it's so important to understand other cultures and what's happening in the world. And we're seeing more of that every day. So when you look at the work that you're doing and the work that you have done, how has it changed, or how are you impacting COVID inside the era of COVID?
Yeah, so it's fascinating because needless to say, COVID has taught us many human lessons as well as business lessons. So the first and most obvious one is the fact that there are great health inequities that were already there as part of the healthcare system, but when put under the stress of a pandemic, we are seeing disparities. Even to this day, when we're looking at the distribution of the vaccine and you see that the rate of vaccination amongst diverse communities is lagging as high as 2x, people still wonder, well, gee, what is it that we're not doing, right? So we've learned that there's a need for inclusion into the way we deliver care, but also because of everything that happened back in May, I'll never forget that one day when all of us saw the video, unfortunately, with George Floyd and this horrific incident that spurred this, awakening of the need for social justice and all of that. There is now a corporate dialogue that has evolved as a result of that for inclusion as a way to impact communities and impact the business. So it's interesting that a year of crisis has accelerated what I had already seen for over a decade in the work we do in cultural intelligence, which then has accelerated what we do with data analytics, with strategy, and impacting big corporations that want to get this right and go beyond the theory into action.
So, so in your response right there, you just mentioned a couple of trends. So let's focus in on that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What are some
Yeah.
trends that we need to actually talk about right now, like 2 or 3?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I could give you 2 or 3 dozen, but let's focus on the 2 or 3. So definitely, trend number 1 is that we are graduating from an era of corporate social responsibility into corporate social accountability. So I had never seen, shareholder-led lawsuits that are actually holding boards and companies, public companies, accountable for their inclusion or diversity numbers. And I know that's scary for some. Not everybody agrees. Are we now placing quotas? No, this is about you making decisions that represent the markets that you serve. But we never saw such a legal kind of like tsunami of activity in that space. So I think that's one that now corporations are paying close attention to. And it's why we're so busy too, providing analytics and different inputs for making faster, better, more inclusive decisions. Definitely that's one. Now, number 2 is in the world of healthcare, we have realized that there's plenty of room for disruption. Everything from delivering telehealth in a way that we have seen its uptake has been tremendous during COVID, but also how do we make sure that access is available to the most vulnerable communities, because ultimately it becomes a matter of public health. So we're seeing it with vaccine distribution. We're seeing it with the way hospitalization and death rates for COVID, unfortunately, disproportionately affected communities of color. And a lot of people in the healthcare space, which is where I come from as a former J&J executive, are puzzled and realizing we got to do better or different stuff to create better outcomes, because ultimately that is costly for all Americans and the cost of healthcare. So I think that's a number 2 thing that is eminent. And I think number 3, which excites me a ton because it ties into the work we do, is the acceleration of all things digital. Now, if we were ever to break the norms of how we work, how we communicate, how we mine data, how we understand people, digitization of everything has just leapfrogged for industries, for startups, for even our own business. We're seeing the growth in how people are hungry for real-time agility and scalable insights, like in the work we do, understanding people, because things are changing so quickly. The old methods are no longer enough. So there you go. Those are 3 big things that are shaking up the business world for sure.
Well, I think you picked the 3 perfect trends because it's totally within your wheelhouse. Absolutely. So, you talked about data, you talked about analytics. So let's shift a little bit to AI. So what can we be doing to prepare ourselves personally for AI in this particular time of COVID and beyond?
Yeah, so that is a big question. And let me caveat this, which maybe goes a bit with your answer. Everyone in business, in healthcare, in any industry needs to realize that things like artificial intelligence or digital, tools or text analytics, that is just the way of business, period. It's no longer like a specialty somewhere. It's kind of like back in the day when only a few people knew how to use like word processors and Excel spreadsheets. Now you just have to do your business. And I feel like that is where AI is heading. It's just it needs humans for it to be intelligent. So artificial intelligence needs human inputs. And all of us in our industries need to understand how we use that to basically create faster, more proactive, and more precise decisions in the way we operate, whether it's in healthcare, automobile, or in insights. It's just a new tool in the toolkit, and we shouldn't be as scared of it. I'm not an engineer. I'm the daughter of 2 engineers. Maybe it's in my DNA, but it is a mindset of being tech-enabled and tech-driven more so than being the one that knows how to code it. It's about knowing how to use it. And I think that is the great evolution we need to go into and realize. COVID has taught us that there's definitely plenty of room for us to use technology to be more proactive, to predict possibilities, and make better decisions.
I think you made a great distinction there about knowing how to use AI. So obviously it's a very big subject. So when we come back, we'll continue the AI conversation and a few other things with Lili after this brief message. We're back with Lili Gil Valletta, cultural expert and entrepreneur. So we kind of alluded at this before the break, but the work that you and your team perform at Cultural Intel is fascinating. The use of AI to understand what people are thinking, how they're motivated. I mean, it's all revolutionary. So you talked a little bit about it before, but let's go a little deeper. So what should we absolutely know about AI?
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, we shouldn't be scared of it. And in the type of work we do, so let me just explain it a bit to those that are watching. What we have done is basically developed an algorithm that can mine every open digital discussion, because you and I volunteer our comments everywhere there is an open comment box in a digital blog, website, social network, etc. And then we can aggregate all of those comments to look at patterns in the way people speak, because that is probably the purest form of opinion. Instead of me asking you a question or doing a poll or a survey, that's the unsolicited voice of the people. Now, AI comes into play when it starts learning. So it's artificial intelligence. It starts learning what are those patterns and the types of clusters of patterns that we see in people's discussions. So when I want to understand what are the barriers for people getting vaccinated right now, instead of asking a question, I can cluster all of those millions of discussions and look at the patterns. And artificial intelligence, text analytics, natural language processing, all words that maybe get confusing for people that are not in the tech space, those are just tools that allows us to organize a lot of information that is messy, and then we get to make sense of it. So big data, unclustered, messy, AI, text analytics organizes it so we can make sense out of it. So that's why I keep saying, don't get intimidated by it, and don't get just too caught up with what is the tool, are we doing Python or what? No, it's how am I using it so I can make better human decisions. And that's the business that we're in, so that we never ask a question and understand how people feel.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job of starting to demystify this whole subject that a lot of people, when you bring up AI, there's immediate fear. So one of the questions I got present to as you were sharing some of the specifics, but then why does AI specifically do a better job at evaluating cultural trends than humans do?
Well, it still needs to be human aided. Otherwise, it's garbage in, garbage out. And that's the magic with AI. It does get smarter the more you do it, but it still needs a human to tell you the parameters of what you're looking for or clustering for. So let me give you an example, because this is very basic. Like in the old times of research, you would have a person tabulating answers. All these answers are about people that like the color blue. All of these answers are about people that like pink. And you're literally like dragging one by one. When you have artificial intelligence or leading tools like what we use, you tell it once what liking blue sounds like and looks like, and then it's able to do in a millisecond what a human tabulating would take days, if not weeks. So it's just accelerating a human process by tech enabling it, therefore making it faster. And now that I taught it once what that looks and sounds like, the more it does it, the quicker it becomes at identifying that tabulation, so to speak. I'm giving you, I mean, my chief data officer was here. He'll be rolling his eyes. Lili, you made it so easy. But it's kind of how it works, right? But I can't emphasize enough, John, it's as intelligent as we train it to be. And that is the danger as well as the joys of what that represents for society.
So one of the key words that I picked up on in your response was the word easy. So it begs the question, are there areas where we as humans may rely too much on AI?
Yeah. That is always the risk, right? And why, the fear of machines taking over will always be there, makes us uncomfortable. How smart can it be? How self, reliant will it become? And I think there's still plenty of questions that we don't have full answers to. It is ultimately going to be about how we choose to use the tools and for what purpose, just as it is with many things in society. What's the intent and what is the ultimate outcome you want out of this tool? Because it's a means to an end. If there is an evil mean at the end of that desire, yes, sure enough, it could be harmful. But if we're using it to, predict the factors that are maybe correlated to a rare disease or patterns in things that, for example, the work we do, we're even using it for mental health, John. Like we can look at what are the signals of teenagers in social media or digital comments that sound suicidal. So we can understand before they take their lives, what are the things that are getting, that are clusters and themes of what's getting in the way of mental health. So it can be very noble, but as with anything in society, which is why, policymakers and big powers that be are trying to figure this out, it needs to be also guarded, because if you want to do evil, you could, but I don't want people to get too scared with that. Luckily, right now, there's plenty of entities doing plenty of good in using artificial intelligence and data for good.
Well, I love the how you're explaining this is really fantastic. And what I was thinking about as you were responding was some of the experiences that I've had where I see traditional marketers kind of resisting some aspects of AI that may be more accurate. So what recommendations or what coaching might you have for traditional marketers who are just getting into AI?
Yeah, so I will tell folks that in my mind, it takes more faith for you to believe that 200 people that answer a questionnaire that was designed by somebody with set questions is a better representation of the masses or public opinion than it would be using AI up against millions of data that is unsolicited and open source and organic. But because you don't understand the method, you may not want to believe in the output. And we find ourselves explaining that quite a bit, John, with the big corporations that trust us to do this work. I mean, we were doing work with Google, with Prudential, with Procter & Gamble, Kellogg's. I mean, world-leading brands that have access to every system you can think of for research. But when they realize that there may be a quicker, faster, and more inclusive way to understand people, then once you get over the hump that now I believe there is power in the voices of the people, open source, more so than me believing what 200 people said, then you get over that mental hang up. But it does take retraining of the old models where we are trained as marketers to have a hypothesis and then go out and ask questions to prove whether your hypothesis is right or not, when what we do is totally the opposite. We don't believe there's a hypothesis. Let's go out into the universe and discover what are the factors that are really driving or not people to make decisions. And that may include things we hadn't even thought about in our hypotheses to begin with. So it's very humbling when you realize as much as we thought we knew, maybe we didn't know as much.
I love it. I love it. Huge subjects, AI, cultural intelligence. We're gonna keep chatting after the break. More with Lili after this. Welcome back. We're talking with Lili Gil Valletta, a cultural intelligence expert doing fascinating work with cultural trends and AI. I mean, just so many subjects. And every week on The Room, where we're going to ask our guests the same 5 questions. So Lili, as a cultural researcher, I hope you'll appreciate how we're trying to capture different perspectives on the same topics. Are you ready for your 5 questions?
I am.
Okay, here we go. Number 1. What do you see as the biggest opportunities that businesses aren't taking advantage of in the world today?
I don't think businesses are paying attention to the fact that by the year 2040, we will be a majority minority country. And that means there is a new mainstream that is highly rich, diverse, culturally inclusive, and therefore we should be designing for that shift and getting ahead of it.
Love it. Number 2, if you could have a conversation with one person from any time or anywhere, who would it be?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I think I would love to have a sit down with Mother Teresa. How was she able to stay so strong and humble at the same time while leading selflessly through purpose? I think she just is an incredible icon and human being.
Yeah, I love that. My favorite quote from her is, "Prayer without action is no prayer at all."
That's right.
Number 3, what is one book every person in business should read and why?
Oh my goodness, and I love him, and I've had a chance to say thank you for writing this book. Simon Sinek's Start with the Why. So you're seeing a theme here with the purpose thing. I feel like if you're chasing money or just like the shallow things in life, you'll be always unfulfilled. So start with the why.
Love that. Number 4, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Ooh, a good mentor of mine back at J&J when I was a young, excited and bright-eyed professional, he said, you know what, Lili, if you really want to get promoted and get noticed, start performing a level up. There's nothing preventing you from showing to the world that if you want to be a director or if you want to be a VP, you can start behaving like one today. And that I've carried through, and I give it to my mentees and my employees over and over again. So strive to perform a level up.
I love that too. Number 5, why is a conversation better than a lecture?
Oh, because it's two-way and it's rich and there's exchange. One way is preachy and boring. So that really makes us connect, and it makes us reflect on each other's perspectives.
Fantastic answers, Lili. That was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to thank Lili Gil Valletta for being our first guest on The Room and sharing some great information. Lili, what would you like to leave us with today?
First of all, I'm grateful for being your first guest. So thank you so much for that. Best on luck on this platform. It's going to be amazing. Those of you that are watching, please watch it, share it, post it. We want to make this really a hub for sharing and understanding new topics. And don't forget, cultural intelligence is not just this program or ambition. It is the way of business. So all of you should look closer into how you're bringing inclusion into your data strategies and your go-to-market strategies.
Fantastic, Lili. Thank you. Thank you so much. Join us next week when our guest will be former CEO of Virgin Hotels, Raul Leal. Raul was instrumental in establishing the Virgin Hotels brand and culture over the last decade. He was also instrumental in developing its hotel offerings and establishing strong relations with their partners and world-class management team. I'm John Lanius. We'll see you next time on The Room.